Hey everybody, welcome back to Reach Out Reptiles. My name is Garrett Hartle. This is Tanya, the Madu Tiger. And in this week's video, we're gonna talk about something that a lot of you guys ask when you're thinking about picking up your first dwarf or superdwarf retic. What would make the better pet for me, a male or a female? We're gonna go over 4 things you should definitely consider. The first 2 might be obvious, but the second 2, you may never have thought about before. Let's go over the pros and cons, males versus females. The first thing is size. I assume that if you are looking for a dwarf or a super dwarf reticulated python, you're already concerned about size. Now, in any given bloodline, whether it's a male or a female, start about the same size, probably grow around the same growth rate, but because of the reproductive cycles that a female's body goes through later in life, the caloric needs of a female are gonna be greater over her lifetime because of the different cycles that she goes through. And because of that, there's a tendency for females to get a little bit bigger. Anytime you get a pet, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to provide for its forever home. Because of that, if you're going for the smallest possible, I would definitely say pick a male if that's your biggest concern. So that's probably going to be the first and most important thing to consider, because obviously the priority is to make sure that you are able to care for the animal for its entire life. The second thing is definitely going to be a major deciding factor for a lot of people, and that's going to be the price of the animal. Now, this isn't true 100% of the time, especially when you get into like investment level animals, but 95% of the time or more, a male is going to cost less than a female of the same type of snake. Now, maybe this comes as a surprise to some of you because the reptiles that you currently keep may be priced the same, male or female. The thing about the superdwarf market, where it is right now, as it's growing and more people are wanting to get into breeding and producing their own superdwarf retics, is that it places a very unique demand on females over males. It's a temporary thing, but kind of temporary long term, until there's so many superdwarfs that they're readily available, very inexpensive, and everybody that has one is able to get exactly what they want. I think this is going to keep being a thing. It's all about supply and demand. Let me put it this way. Here's 2 different items that you can buy off of our website. One of these is a handmade mug. Let's all just take a moment to appreciate the mug. Yay, mug. It's pretty cool, you know, very retro, vintage, super stout. Anybody can drink their hot or cold drink out of this mug at any time. The second item would be one of these. Super cute, stay 6 feet back, I bite. Now, this was a very popular item during a very specific amount of time when the COVID pandemic was taking over and masks were required almost everywhere you went. So we sold a lot of these for a short period of time, but now let's just say we have a lot left over. If any of you guys wants a cute snake COVID mask, you can hit us up, and if you twist G.I. Joe's arm, he's our sales guy, shoot, he'd probably give them to you like, I don't know, 2 for 1, 3 for 1, 4 for 1. We got to get rid of these. We have too many extra masks. The mugs, on the other hand, continue to be in high demand because people still need to drink. So what does this have to do with dwarf and superdwarf retics? Usually when you're trying to get the most efficient bang for your buck, when you're setting up your breeder animals, and not that everyone has to breed, but some people do, those breeders will spend a pretty penny on a really nice male, and then they'll try to buy 2, 3, 4 females, maybe 5. Here we go. That's an easy one. If this is the case, then that means people who want these animals for pets together with people who want them for breeders, you're gonna have a much higher demand for females than you are for males. If everyone's buying 1 male and 5 females so that they can breed, then that means you have 5 times the size of the market on the females, and that's gonna drive that price higher. So if you think you're gonna breed someday, it definitely makes a lot of sense to start buying females. But if all you want is a pet, and you want to be price conscientious or buy the smallest bloodline or the coolest snake for the money that you have, I think the male is going to win in this category as well. They're usually cheaper. Okay, the third thing that we're going to talk about is actually like a major misconception, which is that males are suddenly mean during their breeding cycle. There's a lot of first-time keepers of dwarf and superdwarfs that are like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a male at all, except that I've heard that they become suddenly violent during the breeding season. There's actually no scientific data. I don't even, after many years of keeping, have any experiential data that would suggest that males change their attitude whatsoever based on their own internal system. So I think it's a little bit more about they get affected during breeding season being around females which are cycling. Fun little side note here, I actually called my buddy Clint over at Clint's Reptiles, and I was talking about, my observations with this and checking, some of his extensive scientific knowledge database just to make sure that this was actually accurate. And he was talking about the analogy of it being like a bunch of guys that are hanging out and they're just behaving fine, and then a pretty girl would walk by, all of a sudden they might start jockeying for attention, trying to get her to notice them, becoming competitive with the other guys in the room, and acting a little bit less rationally than they typically do. That being said, if your guy is like your pet, your little retic, and you've raised him up and you have that basis of trust with him from day one, you're still going to have that basis of trust, even if he was cranky on a certain day because you were breeding him or something like that. So there's a huge difference between like a half-wild retic that never gets handled at a massive breeding operation versus a pet animal that you interact with on a regular basis and understand the body language and the trust there in the relationship. But a male alone in a single animal situation, I don't think has any change whatsoever cyclically. Seasonally. Thank you, Thomas. So I think you guys can just kind of write that one off. That just isn't true. The more important factor is that if you get an animal and you raise it yourself, let's say you got a male and you kept it in a single animal pet situation, it's not going to throw everything away, all the relationship building you did, just because. It's not gonna throw all that away just because, a certain month rolls around on a calendar. Females, on the other hand, do go through cycles. They can get a little bit of cranky, during breeding season. It's more like a heightened food response in an already fairly food, responsive animal. The males don't cycle on their own outside of reacting to female cycles. Females do cycle on their own. And the fourth and final thing actually has a lot to do with that. This is something really important that a lot of people don't consider. Because a female cycles on her own and they produce eggs and lay them just as a chicken would, that can be a very health concerning and serious time. As a retic breeder, it's always nerve-wracking every time they come time to lay. I'm sure you've heard stories, nightmare situations of females getting egg-bound or having difficulties, not being able to pass eggs, causing infections, internal damage. All of this can happen even if you don't breed the female. In fact, there are a lot of breeders who think that every time a female cycles, you probably should breed her. I don't know if I would go that far either, but if you're just trying to get a dwarf or superdwarf retic as a pet, just be prepared with the female to have potential medically significant issues revolved around their once-a-year cycle. A good example of this would be our snake, Carla, who was not bred this year, laid a clutch of slugs, and still has 2 eggs retained in her that have been causing a lot of issues. This is something that you don't have to deal with at all if you have a male as a pet. So if you're deciding on your first dwarf or superdwarf retic, and you come up with this question, should I get a male or female? I think that you should know that males probably are going to stay a little bit smaller for the duration of their life than females. They're probably going to cost less to buy, which would give you more options within your own budget of the males that you're going to have. The males don't have any inherent cycles that they go through outside of detecting, females that are wanting to breed with them. And then they also don't have any potential breeding issues. But that doesn't mean males are necessarily better for everybody than females, does it, Tanya? No, it doesn't. See what I mean? The truth of the matter is that if you're prepared to handle the adult size that your female can get to, you don't mind dealing with the upfront costs, you're okay with the fact that they cycle throughout the year, and especially if you think you may want to breed yourself someday, then probably a female would be the right choice for you. If you've watched this entire video, you've heard all the points, it makes sense, and you're still confused, feel free to give us a call or contact us in the contact information in the description. We are here to help you figure out exactly what the best first dwarf or super dwarf retic for you is going to be. Oh, and when you do decide whatever the best retic for you is going to be, hold on, I don't want to make that too sticky just for a shot. Make sure to use Ship Your Reptiles so it gets to you safely.